Well, I'm trying this again. This is albums that I listen to in the winter time. I did something very similar to this back in the fall where I talked about 5 or 6 albums that I listened to that kind of gave me the fall feels. It's a thing that I do. I get certain types of feels or emotions. It's not necessarily emotion, just the feels that I get during specific seasons, specific times, and these are some of the albums that I listen to in the winter time. And I've got about 5 or 6 of them that I want to talk about, and these are just albums that I was either introduced to in the winter and I really solidified that kind of winter feeling. These are albums that I listen to throughout the year and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of a winter album. So these are going to be about, as I said, 5 or 6 different albums that I've listened to during the winter time or that give me the winter feels. And the first up is the easiest one for me to identify, and that's David Gilmour's On an Island. This came out in the winter time for me and I listened to it in the deep winter. And the deep winter being like, we've been in the winter now for like 2 to 3 months. You can barely see the end of it and you're just kind of hunkered down in, like for me at least, it was the family cottage out in the middle of the woods. It's this cozy feeling. You've got like the cabin, you've got like the winter all around you, you're nice and snuggly warm inside, so it just had all those different feels. And the album itself has that same kind of snuggly warmth. It's a little bit more atmospheric, it's a lot more emotive, it's got like a lot more subtle moments on it. It isn't just like blow down the doors, even though it does have a few blow down the doors, like Take a Breath, On an Island, the title track, and I believe A Pocket Full of Stones. But even with all those, a lot of the songs that are surrounding it are a lot darker. They're a lot more, even though they're darker, they're not like menacingly dark. It's just like a crisp, dark night. And that's what I really feel with David Gilmour's On an Island, and it gives me all those feels. Similarly to this is the Flower Kings' Unfold the Future. Now, I don't exactly know precisely when in the year this came out, but I was diving into this in the winter time. Like, I clearly remember that The Truth Will Set You Free song, that 30-minute epic, and just driving around in the snow in that deep winter. And a lot of the songs that kind of surround it also have this. Like, this is a lot more symphonic in terms of the presentation. This is a lot more, I guess, happy in terms of music as well. But a lot of the songs do have this overtone of that kind of darker atmosphere, a little bit more of the subtle approach. It isn't quite as like bombastic or tangible as a lot of the other tracks and albums that came around this time. This is a slog in terms of the length and in terms of the music that's presented in it. Like, a slog doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. It just means that there's a lot to uncover. Within Unfold the Future, it's very much like the winter where it's a slog. Like, especially here in Canada, it's a slog at times. And so I like that this album ebbs and flows a lot, and you have a lot of those contrasts and comparisons to kind of really help you along the way. Now, another album, and this probably is the oldest album on the bunch, is Kate Bush's Ariel. Now, this came out right at the end of high school for me. I read a review about this album in Mojo, and it was the first album from Kate Bush that I really got into as well. So I was listening to this around the New Year's time, and it just kind of followed me throughout the winter. I love the whole second disc, how it's essentially one track, and it's a real big journey. I love the build of this, and I love all the smaller moments on the first disc as well, with like King of the Mountain, Pie, and So Much Love, or whatever that one, and like Washing Machine. But I like how it's just presented in a very intimate way. And winter is a very intimate season. Like, it's one where you kind of bundle up and just kind of hunker down. So I like that this goes on a imaginative journey that really kind of helps you throughout that winter season. And another one that does this, and this is more on like those kind of warmer days where it's very muggy, it's very foggy as well, or when there's like a lot of snow around, is In Rainbows from Radiohead. I was introduced to this album back in the winter time when it first came out, and just the plethora of different motifs and different sounds on this album. It's one of my favorite Radiohead albums, and I think it encaptures a lot of the different motifs and the different feelings that winter can incur. For me, there's a lot of, like, I love winter, so there's a lot of different emotives, there's a lot of different things you can do in the wintertime, and In Rainbows kind of captures all the different characteristics of winter as well. You've got like the snowstorm, you've got the bright sunny days, you've got just the chill days, you've got the very gloomy and glummy days as well. So In Rainbows kind of captures all the different feels while still kind of incorporating that overall essence of wintertime. So coming into the end, I actually couldn't narrow it down to just 5, so I've got a couple other albums as well. One being Opeth, the Roundhouse tapes. I got this for Christmas way back in like 2008, 2009. So this one particularly, just because I was listening to it all throughout the winter, and it was one of my first real introductions to Opeth. It was a great time, and I just snuggle up, and it's got that dark atmosphere. Another one that's very dark, but not necessarily in a menacing way, but in a very chill way, is Max Richter's 3 Worlds, the music from Wolfworks. Just some of these tracks where it's very atmospheric. You've got a lot of ebb and flow, the classical aspect of this and the neoclassical aspect of this, especially within some of the more obscure songs and the ones that kind of go off the map a little bit. This one in particular has that for sure. And finally, the last one that I want to talk about is Taylor Swift's Red. This was the first album that I heard from Taylor Swift, and I heard it in and around the Super Conference for the library community at OLA. This was the first time I went to either the OLA Super Conference and listen to Taylor Swift, so the two are very closely tied together, and they all take place in the winter time, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least include it in this list. So that's about it. Those are the albums that I usually come around to within the winter time. They always kind of find their way in my musical library at this time. So what are some of the albums that you listen to in the winter time? What are some of the albums that you feel kind of capture that winter essence? Let me know of that by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.